So Germany is going to be having its first Veterans Day. The date marked for Germany's Veterans Day is June 15th. So mark your calendars. Next year on June 15th, Germany is scheduled to have its first Veterans Day. And it will be the first Veterans Day that Germany has ever had since the end of the Second World War. Now, why hasn't Germany had a Veterans Day in so many decades? Well, it's quite obvious. See, there was this guy named Adolf Hitler, and there was the Holocaust, and everyone knows this story, right? Everyone knows this history, and everyone knows why Germany has not had a Veterans Day in so many decades. Because if you have a Veterans Day in Germany, it is a slippery slope, even if it's just for the soldiers who fought in the operations or who took part in the operations for the modern day German armed forces, or what is known in German as the Bundeswehr. Even if it's just that, it's still a slippery slope, because who's to say that someone's not going to pop up and make the argument that the Wehrmacht should be remembered in Veterans Day? All of the old German soldiers who fought against the Soviet Union should also be celebrated, right? All of the old German soldiers who are still alive, the old German veterans who are still alive, who fought against the Soviets, they were members of the Wehrmacht, or maybe they were members of the SS, or maybe they were just camp guards who took part in atrocities in the death camps, in the concentration camps. Those people should be celebrated. That is the inevitable argument, and that is what this is going to lead to. Because for so many decades, you have had modern-day Nazis pushing for the culture of remembrance for the Wehrmacht, for the SS. That's why you'll read stories of neo-Nazis going to Wehrmacht grave sites and all that, because they want to push a culture of celebrating the Nazis. And one of the ways that they do this is to say, well, they were they were soldiers fighting for Germany, fighting for the survival of Germany, because they were fighting against communism, they were fighting against the bloodthirsty Bolsheviks, and they should be celebrated. But in all of the articles that I looked through on this subject of Germany's new Veterans Day, none of them said that Wehrmacht soldiers will be celebrated or praised or thanked. All of the articles talked about German soldiers who participated in the operations done by the modern-day state of Germany, post-World War II Germany. But it's still a slippery slope, and we all know what this is going to lead to. We all know that it's eventually going to lead to remembering and celebrating the Wehrmacht. And this is inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. Why? Because there were regimes in the past that were extremely murderous, that today are not looked at with horror and disdain and disgust and trepidation. For example, the Huns. The Huns were murderous. They were absolute butchers. They were monsters. The Huns were monsters. But if you look at a modern day book, okay, let's rewind a little bit here. If you look at a medieval text on the Huns, how do they describe the Huns? Bloodthirsty, murderous, thieves, rapacious, evil, monsters, demons in the flesh. Now, compare that to a modern day book on the Huns. The Huns are described as great military strategists and people who were fairly diplomatic, or people who were known for some kind of innovation, and people who were actually more reasonable than people in the Middle Ages portrayed them as. The Mongols and other Hunnic people, if you look at how the Mongolians were portrayed at their time, they were portrayed as what? The same thing as the Huns: murderous, scoundrels, people who butchered millions of people, and the Mongolians butchered tens of millions of people. They did. They killed, oh my God, the Mongolians. They were awful. They weren't just nice little throat singers who rode on short horses. They were murderous scoundrels, and they killed so many tens of millions of people. They invaded China, they invaded Iraq, they invaded Persia, and they killed millions of people. And this was before modern day technology. This was before the railroads. See, the Germans and the Ottomans, when they did their genocides, they used the railway system to systematically move people to their deaths. The Mongolians didn't have railways. They didn't have gas chambers. They didn't have tanks. They didn't have machine guns. They didn't have any sort of modern technology built for systematically genociding people. And regardless of this, regardless of their absence of modern technology, they still butchered tens of millions of people. They butchered so many people. And how are they portrayed today? Well, yeah, they did some killing, but hey, I mean, they were pretty innovative. They were very intelligent. They came up with this amazing postal service. I remember seeing a documentary many years ago on the Mongolians and on Genghis Khan. Oh, and how Genghis Khan, he was this visionary, and he was told by some shaman that the great blue sky god Tengri destined him to form this great empire. And at the end of the documentary, there was this academic who said something like, well, the Mongolians, they formed a very, very effective and efficient postal service. So yes, they would kill millions of people. They would butcher your whole village, rape your wife. Oh yeah, kill your children, all sorts of sick stuff. But the mail came on time. This is the inevitable state for the narrative on the Nazis that is to come. It's inevitable. It eventually will happen. Because that's how human beings are. We eventually look back and we say, wow, who are the most evilest people ever? Let's glamorize them. Let's romanticize them. We do this with the Aztecs. The Aztecs were absolutely evil. They killed tens of thousands of people as human sacrifices every single year for their sun god Tonatiuh. They would butcher 2,000 people in just one day. Just in one day, 2,000 people. Pyramids. We look at pyramids, right? We say, oh, pyramids, they're so amazing. Oh, the Mexican, Mesoamerican, Aztec pyramids. Oh, Chichen Itza and all that stuff. Those pyramids were death camps. They were death camps. Those pyramids were killing centers. They were not just nice buildings to marvel at. No, these were killing centers. Centers of mass murder and butchery. They would put a human being on this platform and rip his heart out. And there was one Spanish writer who said, he wrote about the Mayan ritual of human sacrifice, and he said that a Mayan priest could rip your heart out as fast as a Spaniard could cross himself. That's how fast they would rip your heart out. They were that efficient in the art of heart plucking. And if you look at a book on the Aztecs or on the Mayans written by a Spaniard in that time when the Spanish were settlers in the New World, how are the Aztecs and how are the Mayans portrayed? They're portrayed as heathens, cannibals, heart pluckers, people who did horrendous mass human sacrifice, people who would skin other humans. And then, for example, I think the Aztecs had this ritual where they would skin a man and then a priest would wear his skin like Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Now, if you look at a modern day text on Aztec culture or the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, and if you look at the books written by these modern day academics, how do they portray the Aztecs and the Mayans? Oh, people who were very innovative. They built amazing architecture. They were extremely brilliant people. They had this amazing civilization. Now, to be fair, all of that is true. And even the Spanish acknowledged this. The Spanish acknowledged that the Aztecs and the Mayans were very innovative. That they had, especially the Aztecs. There was one Spanish contemporary source from that time. I think his last name was Gomara. And was it Gomara or was it Diaz? I think it was Bernal Diaz. I don't remember, but it was some Spanish writer who was there during the Spanish conquest of Mexico. And he said that the Aztecs had a city that was so vast, it was so big, and it was so industrious, and it was so metropolitan. He said it was unlike any city that you would see in Spain. They described these massive buildings and pyramids, temple towers. It was amazing. So it is true that the Aztecs were very innovative, very intelligent people. They had a civilization, but it was still evil. Now let's fast forward to our own times. The Aztecs, not the Aztecs, the German Nazis, Nazi Germany, was what? It was innovative. It was extremely technologically up to date and advanced. I think it was the center for medical science. It had an extremely advanced military. It was militarily very advanced and industrious, but it was still evil. Well, if you look at the Mongolians, they had their empire. If you look at the Aztecs, they had their empire. The Huns, they had their own thing going on, but they were all evil. Well, the Germans were evil, but very industrious and advanced. So how will the future see Germany? Eventually, the narrative is going to change. It's not going to be just, well, the Nazis were bloodthirsty and evil and murderous. It's going to be, well, the Germans in the 1930s and 40s were very innovative. They had an empire. They were technologically extremely advanced. They were the center of medical research and science. They were very innovative and advanced people. And I fear that the focus is going to be more on that, and they're going to put the innovation character of Nazi Germany over its atrocities, and the atrocities will become secondary to German Nazi innovation and also the advancement of German empire. And so the Germans are going to be praised as military geniuses, and Hitler will be seen as a Napoleon. And we're seeing this change. We're seeing the change. Germany now has a Veterans Day. We all know what this is going to lead to. Oh, no, they're just praising the German soldiers who served in Iraq or Afghanistan or Africa or the Balkans in the 1990s. But who is to say that someone is not going to pop up and say, why can't we have a memorial for the Wehrmacht? Why can't we celebrate elderly Germans who fought for the Wehrmacht or who were a part of the SS? Why? And is not Germany indirectly in a war with Russia right now? Is not Germany the second biggest provider of military aid to Ukraine? So Germany right now is indirectly in a war with Russia. It's surreal to me because the Germans killed tens of millions of Russians during the Second World War. I'm not even talking about soldiers. I'm not even talking about Soviet soldiers. The Germans butchered tens of millions of Soviet citizens, Russians, and other citizens of the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And here they are saying, hey, let's give tanks to the Ukrainians so they can go and kill Russians. You know, it's amazing that the Germans have been very careful not to offend the Israelis. We have to be very careful. We have to express our utmost support for the Israelis. I mean, the Germans, I will say, the German government, when the war in Gaza first began, the German government was the most, the most flamboyant when it came to supporting Israel. More flamboyant, more in your face than the United States. The Americans were saying, okay, Israel has a right to defend itself, but let's not kill civilians and stay away from Rafah. And how many times have we heard Biden say, stay out of Rafah, and the Israelis don't give a damn. They just keep going. They don't care. They're not listening to Biden. But the Germans were way more flamboyant, and they were way more bold in expressing their pro-Israel sentiment than the Americans were. And they'll say, well, it's because of the Holocaust. Germany did the Holocaust, so we have to be careful, and we have to express our utmost support for Israel. And right now, after the United States, Germany is the biggest supplier of military supplies and arms to Israel. And I have to ask myself, if you're so careful when talking about the Israeli-Gazan conflict because of the Holocaust, then why in the hell are you so brazen when it comes to Russia when you killed tens of millions, around 30 million Russians during the Second World War? You're so careful about Israel because of the Holocaust, but you're not careful about Russia. And you supply weapons to the Ukrainians to kill Russians. So with this in mind, what is a subsequent step? What is something that we can expect for the future? One thing that we can expect is a growing narrative that says, well, we're fighting against the Russians right now, and the Russians haven't changed their ways. They're still expansionistic, just like they were when Stalin was running the Soviet Union, and the Germans had to fight the Soviets because the Soviets were bloodthirsty. The Bolsheviks were killing millions of people, butchering Christians. They were utterly murderous people. They were trying to take over Germany through different terrorist networks within Germany, trying to establish a communist government within Germany. And so we had to go and fight against the Soviets. And who fought against the Soviets? Was it not the Wehrmacht? Was it not the SS who were fighting against the Soviets? So we should be honoring the Wehrmacht and the SS. And this is going to be the denouement within German military culture. And the reason why, or at least one of the reasons why Germany has established a Veterans Day is because remember what the German government, through Mr. Pistorius, said, the defense minister of Germany. Is his name Pistorius or Pistoffius? It's like this weird German name. Boris Pistorius. What kind of name is this? Is this guy German or is he Roman? General Pistorius. Boris pissed off. Okay. Boris Pistorius, which is the weirdest name I've ever seen. Boris Pistorius, the current defense minister in Germany, stated that Germany needs to become war ready. War ready. And so that's why they're decreeing Veterans Day. I'm not making this up. This is what they're saying. They're saying we have to make Germany war ready, so we're going to establish a Veterans Day so that we can develop a culture of militarism. Germany wants to develop a culture of militarism. That sounds horrifying. When did we last see this? World War II? World War I? There's a reason why the Germans felt compelled not to have a Veterans Day. It's because of their very, very militaristic and destructive history. And they'll say, well, no, we're just celebrating soldiers who served in recent conflicts. Okay, conflicts like what? The Balkans. Okay. What was Germany doing in the Balkans? Germany was backing the KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army. The KLA was made up of Albanian thugs and Nazis, people who kidnapped people to steal their organs. These people were murderers. They were terrorists. These people were evil. The KLA was evil. And the Germans were backing them, arming them, backing them to kill Serbs. We saw this before the 1990s. We saw this prior to the 1990s. We saw this during Nazi Germany's occupation of the Balkans, where the Germans backed the Bosnians, the Croatians, and the Albanians to do what? To kill the Serbs, to fight against the Soviets. World War I, the Germans allied with the Austrians and the Ottomans to control the Balkans. In the 1990s, the Germans were in the Balkans. I'm seeing a pattern of behavior here. So even if you just want to celebrate what Germany has done recently, well, what Germany has done recently bespeaks of a growing aspiration for hegemony. And that is what Germany is growing to. Germany is becoming a major hegemony. It already is a hegemony. It already is an economic hegemon. It is an economic hegemon, but it is not a military hegemon. But it's becoming that. And remember what Olaf Scholz said. He said Germany needs to become the most powerful military force in Europe. So what are we witnessing here but the rise of the Fourth Reich?